Hello everyone, this is a briefing on Assessment 2, Design Development, and it's worth 10%. I'd ask that you read the course outline as well as listening to this lecture for a briefing on the assessment. In this assessment, we zoom out from the interiors and we focus on resolving and signing off on the large-scale architectural components of the project. A smaller component is the development of the 6 key interior spaces of the project. So what we're asking is that at this stage you have consolidated your research and large-scale propositions from DP7 and the beginnings of DP8, and that you've reflected on Assessment 1 in DP8 and developed your 6 interiors from this assessment task. The vehicle that you'll use for this assessment are design development drawings. And if you have a look at the example here, you'll see that yes, they look technical. We're not assessing you purely on technical documentation or your ability to technically resolve the project. This vehicle is a means of generating a documentation set that you'll be able to use after you graduate. And I would suggest that you look at this assessment and at the design development drawings simply as another vehicle to further develop your design propositions and communicate your design propositions. You will need to imagine that you are communicating these ideas through design development drawings to an in-house audience. This means that you might imagine you're working at a firm and you're presenting these drawings to your design manager over a table in an informal kind of manner. What you'll have on assessment day is 10 minutes to do this, so in discussion with your tutor, and your peers will also be reviewing your drawings and marking them up. All of this is a means of emulating industry practice. So, what do you actually need to submit for this assessment? What are the deliverables? You need to show us your proposal as a whole, so master plan and architectural gesture, at 1 to 500 via a floor plan. You also need to show us your 6 key spaces, so the ones that you selected and communicated in Assessment 1, at 1 to 100 scale in plan and in section. Both of these sets of drawings will be supported by larger scale contextual plans. Your drawing set will need to be consistent, so you'll need to figure out which paper size will work to show the master plan as a whole, as well as those 6 key interior areas. On assessment day, we're asking that you submit these onto Moodle online, but that you also bring 2 printed A3 sets that we'll be able to review and mark up in class. These are not fully rendered sections and plans. What we're asking for are black, white or grayscale design development drawings. So again, not rendered drawings, but also not technical construction drawings. So we're not looking for this. And we're also not looking for this. Here are some examples of what we are looking for, and it's up to you to figure out the best means of communicating your design ideas using particular graphic strategies. And this is really the challenge of this assessment. So you need to think, how do I communicate my design intent and interior experience using the graphic language of design development drawings? So you've moved from, in Assessment 1, communicating via perspective and mood image. You're now communicating via design development drawings. Same project, same design intent, different mode of communication. So if we have a look here at an example from a few years ago, you've got a particular perspective of a restaurant space here. How do you communicate the crux of that experience using a design development drawing? Some common questions that arose last year. Which drawings do I need to show? What do I need to show in those drawings? How much do I need to show in those drawings? And how do I show my design intent? So we'll go through all of this now. Which drawings do I need to create? You'll see this in the assessment outline, and I'll run through some examples of this now. So you have to have one cover page, which also has a drawing list on it. You need to have one site context plan, a 1 to 500 site plan that shows the ground floor of the entire La Perouse headland, including Bear Island. And on this, you will reference the 6 key spaces that you've chosen. You need to have 1 to 100 floor plans of all levels of all 6 key spaces, including the roof. And you'll need to have 12 1 to 100 sections of the 6 key spaces. That means 2 sections per key space. Oh, sorry, my screen has gone off here. So first of all, the cover page. The cover page, like all pages, should have a title block, which you will create. And the cover page in particular will have a list of the drawings included in your documentation set. The next page should be the site context plan. This is where we see the site itself in the broad macro context of the surrounding area. Most of you will have done something similar to this in DP7. The next page should be the 1 to 500 site plan. Something to note here that's slightly different to DP7 is that we're asking that you cut this site plan not from roof level, which you would normally show in a site plan, but at ground floor level. So essentially this shows us a large floor plan of the entire proposal for the headland. The following pages should be your 1 to 100 floor plans. What you need to note is that we're not just showing the ground floor, we're showing all levels of the floor plan for each of your 6 key spaces. So if you select an exhibition area, for example, and that exhibition area runs from a basement level to a ground floor to a first floor, you'll have 3 floor plans that you're showing. Your 1 to 100 plans should include a 1 to 100 roof plan, and this might be something that some of you may not have done before. What you should focus on in the roof is the geometry of the planes and the slope of each of the planes. Remember that roofs need to distribute water. So what you show on a roof plan generally is an up arrow pointing showing the upwards direction of the roof slope. You also then need to have 1 to 100 sections, and again this will be 2 per key space, generally a short section and a long section. So they're the drawings that you need to create. What do you actually need to show on those drawings? What we're looking for, if you have a look at the assessment criteria, is compliance with codes and standards. So the first code is Australian Standards AS 1428. This standard examines accessibility of the built environment by people with a disability. You'll need to read that code and make sure that your proposal aligns with it. The second code is Australian Standards 1100. This is a code that outlines technical drawing conventions across Australia. The third set of standards that you should be looking at is the Building Code of Australia. We're not marking you on this, but this is what you'll need to do when you graduate and work in practice. So, the BCA outlines technical provisions for the design and construction of buildings and other structures throughout Australia. You will have looked at all of these codes in DP7. BCA will tell you how wide particular corridors and doors should be, will tell you how many numbers of pans you need, how many numbers of basins you need. So we'd like to see that you're bringing that research through from DP7 into DP8, And if you haven't done it, you'll need to be doing it in DP8 and evidencing it in your spaces and in your documentation drawings. What to show on the 1 to 500 drawing. So if we have a look at Zara Bates' example here, we can see that first of all we need to show the existing site context. So we're just looking at the headland itself. This means showing landscape via terrain and contours. You'll see shown in a kind of light grey colour here, as well as existing built structures. This will include the buildings themselves, as well as roads and other pieces of infrastructure. You'll then need to show your proposed works, and this means major structures, walls, openings, stairs, ramps, lifts, etc., etc. Again, this will be cut at ground floor level, so it will be a 1 to 500 floor plan of the whole precinct. You'll also need to show here landscape propositions. So a number of you have outdoor barbecue areas, gathering spaces, auditoria, etc., pathways. This all needs to be shown on this plan in a way that develops from the master plan that you proposed to us in DP7. As I've jotted down on the screen here, you'll see that you need to call out, so using bubbles and references, your 6 key spaces so that they are referred to on this page and then detailed later on in the drawing set. You should also label your spaces. So this can be done by simply noting them on the plan: outdoor gathering area, entry point, exhibition space, etc., or by numbering them as Zara has done and then having a legend on the side of the page. What to show on your 1 to 100 plans. So as per the 1 to 500, but you'll see more detail. So you'll be showing major structure, walls, openings, and the thicknesses of all of these, stairs, ramps, and lifts, as well as fixed joinery, so bars, benches, big basin blocks, workstations, fixtures, again, so basins, pans, etc., etc. Key materiality, so as you see on Zara's plan here, we start to see that there's a differentiation of tile surfaces on the floor. And accessibility components. So in the 1 to 100s, you'll start to see tactile indicators and handrails, for example. You do not need to show at this stage existing structure. So generally we show existing structure simply as shaded. If you have a look at the top of Zara's plan here, you can see an existing quarried sandstone wall. You do not need to show any loose furniture. You do not need to show lighting. You don't need to show fine interior details because you won't see them at 1 to 100. You also do not need to show dimensions. What to show on your 1 to 100 roof plan. So as you can see here, Zara has a floor plan on the left and then a roof plan that relates to that on the right. This is a steel canopy that somewhat overlays some of the interior space and some of the external marketplace. So we see the roof plan itself and the structure of the roof plan, and we see some of the built structure below coming through in a simplified way. So what kind of technical drawing conventions do you need to show in your documentation set? You will again need to read AS11100 to make sure that you're complying with this code. Some of the key elements to consider, and I'll highlight these with my pen here, are the development and the communication of a title block. You need to develop a legend, so a hatching legend, that is a means of showcasing existing versus proposed componentry of your design. So generally we show existing elements either as shaded in black or, as Zara has done here, in dark grey. And we can see the legend here. We need to make sure that we label all of our spaces, so in terms of their function. So you can see here workshop, display, etc., etc. We need to make sure that our drawings are cross-referenced to one another. So you can see here that Zara has section markers that will relate to her sections that come later in the documentation set. We can use annotations to start to note and describe major features. So we can see here. And what you might start to describe are key joinery elements as well as materiality. You also need to show relative levels, so RLs. We can see here that Zara has these here and here because the ramp is slightly higher than the lower workshop area. We'd like to see that you are correctly using line weights to differentiate what is cut and what is not cut, to differentiate, again, elements that you'd see in section versus elements that you'd see in elevation. We want to make sure that you're showing correct door and window opening symbols. So have we got any examples here? No, I don't think so. But we'd like to see, do you have hinged doors? Do you have pivot doors? Do you have sliding doors? Then if we think about windows, are the windows hinging outwards? Are the windows sliding up and down? Are the windows bifold windows? What kind of frame is there? Where does the glass sit? Your drawings and the symbols that you use will be a means of communicating all of this information, which should all relate to your design intent. Finally, you'll need to show stair numbering. So if we have a look at Zara's stairs here, you can see that we have small numbers along the side here for each riser from 1 upwards. We can also see on Zara's that we have tactile indicators as well as a handrail located along the side and the bottom of the staircase, and an arrow indicating the upwards direction of both the staircase and down here, the ramp. If you have a look closely at Zara's drawing, you'll see that these beams here are dashed, and that's to indicate that they're overhead. What else to show on your drawings? So remember that these drawings, again, like your perspectives, are a means of communicating your design intent. And those design ideas should be acutely responsive to both the people, so the users of each of the programs that you've developed, the use, so what does that program really need, and how can the space best support the function, as well as the place. You're in La Perouse. So how do you respond to all of that in your design decisions, and how can you communicate that information in your design drawings? We're really open to how you would like to do that in this documentation set. Another common question that arose last year: how much do I need to show in these drawings? What extent do I need to show? What we are asking you to do is show the key space only. An error would be to feel that you have to resolve and document every single component of your whole proposal. That's not the intent of this assessment. So if you have a look here again at Zara's work, we can see that she is detailing here the arrival and entry floor plan. So that's kind of this space here. Here we have Zara's event space. And if you have a look at the legend down here, it's not highlighting, you can see that it says surrounding structures or programs not to be detailed. So although the event space is directly adjacent, the arrival area, Zara hasn't detailed it because it's not one of her key areas. Can you show more than one key space on one drawing? Yes, absolutely. So Michelle Lee's is an example of this. Over here, we have the main entry area, and over here, directly adjacent to that, is the art gallery space. So yes, it's completely fine. You don't have to separate all of your drawings to show individually the key spaces. The challenge: how do you use the graphic conventions of design development drawings to communicate your design intent, your design ideas, the spatial experience? How do you use these kind of technical drawings to evoke experience? So let's imagine that this here on the screen is a perspective that you presented to us in Assessment 1. How would we use technical drawing conventions to communicate the essence of this perspective? Okay, so we've got a kind of curved corridor library space that we're looking at here. So let's think first of all about the wall on the right, right? So it kind of curves around the corner here, and then we have an archway, an opening, and then it continues for a little bit. And then we have another archway, and then we get these sort of blade kind of louver systems. So if we put that like this, like this, like this. So let's draw what we're cutting through first. Then we have another wall here. It's a bit hard to see what's going on around the corner, but we'll draw it like this for now. And then we have these louvers that repeat. And we'll just draw those as lines for now, remembering that when you draw, you need to show thicknesses of everything. Okay, so we'll show it like that for now. And we see that they're kind of angling towards each other. So we get these really solid masses versus these kind of filtering louvers. We also need to show what's happening overhead, right? So we'd be able to see, using a dashed line, the archways, the second archway over here, right? And then we'll see these overhead structures coming around, again, using dashed lines. Right. Dashed. Okay. Let's imagine that we have a terrazzo floor and that this is a really strong design feature that I'd like to show. So I might start to probably in a different color. So let's say this was, for now we'll just do a yellow, but maybe this would be in a lighter gray. You could start to show the aggregate of the terrazzo. Right? And maybe you start to show the expansion joints of the terrazzo. If we imagine that these are existing walls, we'd colour them in. Right? And any new walls, let's say over here, we'd leave white. We're not going to show for this stage any loose furniture. We're just going to show fixed joinery and major walls and openings, roofs, floors, etc., etc. Okay, let's take another example. How do we show some of the key design components and materiality, again using the technical drawing convention? And how do we show an intent about the intended use of the space? So if we show these kind of large steps here, right, like that. And again, they're going to have a thickness that will start to come through more clearly at 1 to 50, but you can start to indicate. Then we have smaller steps that we're not cutting through, so these would be in a lighter pen in the distance. Right. We'll make those thicker because we're cutting through those. And then we have these ribs that continue from the wall all the way up to the ceiling in some kind of lime-washed plywood. So if we draw those quite finely, yeah. Right. I would be thinking now, well, how thick do you want those ribs to be? What kind of space are you trying to create? What kind of experience are you trying to create? Do you want something really delicate? Are you trying to kind of suppress scale and create a real sense of verticality as we are here by avoiding any horizontal joints and exaggerating the vertical. This is your time to start to develop in your mind and on the page those details. It's not just technical documentation. We might start to show the grain of the timber in a very light pen. And then we can actually start to put in the people. So showing people sitting on those steps allows the viewer to see, all right, well, that's not actually just for circulation. It's a place to sit. And, there might be someone standing against the wall here. So you can start to develop these technical drawings as a means of experimenting with your design ideas. Emphasis being on the word experiment. So what we felt in assessment 1 is that there was not enough experimentation with graphic strategies used to communicate your design ideas. I really encourage you to look around, look at design journals, look what contemporary and historical designers and artists and graphic artists are doing to explore and to communicate ideas. Don't just think about the drawing or the image. Think about this in a holistic manner. So how do you integrate text, typography, font, scale with the drawing as an image into a composition as a whole? What are you being assessed upon? So I really encourage you to read the course outline and make sure that you understand all of the assessment criteria, and that before you present, you're running through those criteria and making sure that you align with them. The assessment is broken up into 3 components. The first, 65%, is design intent and large scale resolution. Again, the emphasis on this assessment is on the large scale. 30% is on crafting, communication and professionalism. So again, that's about the kind of graphic componentry. 5% is your ability to comply with the standards and codes. I'll run through the key selection criteria that are bold in the course outline. So if we look first of all at design intent and large scale resolution, it's worth 65%. You'll see that many of the criteria are very similar to those that you saw in assessment 1. So the first looks at design intent or design idea, underpinning in this case the master plan and the architectural gesture. The second, again, looks at the master plan and the architectural gesture in terms of the quality of spatial experiences and their responsiveness to the intended use and users of the site. So are you really understanding who you're designing for and the nature of the program or the function that you're designing? Again, if we think about feedback from assessment 1, this is not about recreating programs and spaces as we know them now. It's about reimagining that program, thinking specifically about what it could become in this project for this site for the particular users that you're designing for. This is your chance to innovate. The third is how well have you engaged with the larger site context, so the surrounding elements of the La Perouse headland. How sophisticated is the dialogue or relationship in the architecture and the master plan between proposed and extant structures as well as the landscape? How well have you resolved the architectural gesture? And finally, and this is a smaller criteria, how well have you developed your interior spaces in critically reflecting on the feedback that you received in assessment 1? Crafting, communication and professionalism. So this one is 30%. So as per assessment 1, this is about communication of design intent through effective use of graphic strategies. The second, is this presentation demonstrative of a pre-professional level of design and crafting? Could we give this to a client and charge for it? Same criteria as assessment 1. Standards and codes. This is what you'll be looking at in each other's work. So Are spaces fully accessible to AS 1428.1? Are stairs and ramps compliant with AS 1428.1? Are drawings created within the guides of AS 1100? So you'll need to understand those codes in order to create your drawings, but also in order to mark up your peers' drawings. The presentation itself on assessment day. So I want to emphasize that this is an informal in-house presentation. Imagine that you're talking to your design supervisor at a firm. You're going to be discussing this in groups of 4, and you need to bring 2 reduced A3 sets of your documentation into class. Your peers will be doing a technical markup, and the tutor will be reviewing the design itself. So with your tutor in groups of 4, you'll be laying out your drawings, and we'll be talking about the design intent and the spatial experience. Again, focusing on the large scale master plan and architectural gesture so that we can sign off on this and you can then move on into interiors. While you're waiting to see your tutor, you'll be in groups of 4 in a round robin format, marking up each other's drawings based on technical drawing conventions and on compliance with standards. So, to sum up the assessment, the focus is on how well you have resolved the large-scale design propositions of your project. We'll be looking simply at the development of 6 key interiors. We'll be looking at how your design intent has been communicated through technical drawing conventions, and at how well you have experimented and innovated both with the spaces and with graphic expression. Good luck with this assessment. We really look forward to seeing the development of your schemes. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can always ask myself, your tutor, or jump on to the Moodle Q&A forum. And again, I remind you to pop up any process work that you have, sketches, digital drawings, etc., onto Pinterest so that we can see how you're going along the way and comment on your work. Thanks, and see you all soon.